Okay, here we go. Part 15, Phantasy Star 4, Generation 4. Phantasy Star Generation 4, keeping in the convention of PlayStation 2 remakes. We are cruising to Dezoris, and we're gonna go to the Esper Mansion to see what awesome who Rune wants Rudy to talk to. Oh, you can't see my mug, the way I'm holding it there. I was so excited when, I remember, like, going to Hot Topic, like, you know, after, you know, a couple years after college, everything, and starting to see more video game shirts, and, you know, how they merchandise Sonic was with, like, the Sonic Adventure, you know, and Sonic Adventure 2, and then, you know, with that design of him and everything, and once the original, like, Mario stuff, like, 8-bit Mario stuff started coming out, I started thinking to myself, I wonder when they're gonna start, like, you know, merchandising, you know, original Sonic, basically, and then finally it started happening. I got real excited. Alright. So, you know, this is one of my, you know, this is not my favorite RPG, honestly. Like, that would be Lunar and Lunar Eternal Blue. But this might be, I'd have to think about it more, but this might be my third favorite. And when I started working on the game, and again, like I said, there's a number of Phantasy Star 4, you know, script changes and, you know, fan hacks and stuff like that now. When I started doing this in 2018, to my absolute shock, there were zero. In terms of, you know, fixing the translation errors and, you know, doing anything with the script. There was like a hell mod, you know, and, you know, like a proper caser, you know, that Vivify did. And some things like that, but I just could not believe that, you know, no one had like done it. And then when I found out that there was a disassembly for it, meaning that, oh, this is like anybody could just go in here and change, you know, these text files and you know, all that. Yeah, I was like really shocked that like no one had done it. So I think now that we're like getting to the end here, one of the things I wanted to, you know, talk more about that I talked a little bit in the last one is that, you know, everyone's gonna have different opinions, and we all love these games, you know, and that's why we're, you know, doing fan hacks of them, and, you know, and playing fan hacks of them. Everyone's got different opinions, and, you know, honestly, you know, when I see something, you know, in a, whether it was in the original game or a script, or especially in like a fan hack, I think it is a little bit easier for us to be critical of, you know, of other people's work, you know, especially when it's like a fan thing, because, you know, a lot of times we just like so appreciate the fact that they worked on a game at all, and, you know, we can overlook, you know, all the, you know, various issues with it. But I do think, you know, we have a tendency to just be like, well, they did, you know, they changed this one line, and, you know, they're like a, you know, total bleeping idiot. I can't believe they did that. And, you know, we're all doing this stuff for fun, and a lot of creators, you know, will, you know, solicit your feedback and appreciate it. At least I do. I talked to a couple that are, you know, kind of afraid of feedback, and doing this fan hack process has helped me honestly get over that. Like, in terms of my professional life too, in terms of not being afraid to see other people's, you know, not always 100% positive, you know, response to my work, you know, regardless of, you know, how good I think it is or something like that. And, you know, it's made it a lot better. Yeah, that's a new line, but that'd be funny. And again, this character does have a name, you know, Hasari, in the design documents. Can I have scan lines on? Check and see if I have scan lines on. I can't really tell on my display if I have scan lines on. I'm using an OSSC for my setup here. I don't know, in case you're interested. I'm using a capture card that someone else loaned me from StarTech.com. It's a USB 3.0 card. Seems to do the job. And I played games on like a PC CRT with a an old XRGB2 upscaler to upscale 240p to 480p for a CRT tube. But you know, not everyone has space for, you know, a nice CRT or even like a crappy CRT. So an OSSC is definitely the cheapest way to get a really nice picture, you know, from your old systems for sure. Alright, so here we go with this is probably my very favorite moment in the entire game. You know, when he goes into this cave here and you know, we have a awesome conversation that I always felt should be like honestly a lot longer, and it was kind of a missed opportunity in the game to make more of a personal connection between the characters. So that's what I did. So let's check it out. Yeah, so I changed this line because originally his was the sacred sword, you know, Elsydeon, because, you know, Rune just said, well, you know, Elsydeon awaits you, but Rune brought him here to talk to a person, and not a sword. So I figured his reaction would more likely be, okay, well, I'm gonna get a sword, but like, who am I supposed to talk to and like feel better about, you know, this whole, you know, argument that we just had. So I feel like that line makes this conversation make a little bit more sense, but you know, you could disagree. It's fine. And here's a little thing that I changed. We'll look at here. Yeah, like Rune can't heal, so how's he always like, here, let me heal you in this part of the game? It's like, you've been holding out on it. Did you have like, you know, get healed, you know, this whole time that that Kyra has, you know, the power from Phantasy Star 1? You just had it, you just didn't feel like using it this whole time because you're a jerk, or like what? And then I added, you know, Rika having a line there because she's the one who heals him, and yeah, again, always trying to look for small ways to strengthen the connection between Rudy and Rika, because again, like, you know, if you're watching this, so you played the game before, so they, you know, the fact that they're like a couple at the end of by the end of the game, when the game really hasn't done much to establish that. Like if you play a game like the original Lunar, you know, it's really baked into the game that, you know, the two characters, how important they are to each other. Same thing with Eternal Blue, I think, you know, obviously. You know, the game is constantly reinforcing the connection between them, and in fact, the connection between them drives the plot of the game. Phantasy Star 4 doesn't do that, so when they get together, like, at the end of the game, basically, you know, I think it's kind of out of left field and kind of surprising, so... And I forget if I added this line to Ren completely or I just slightly changed it, but, anytime, you know, you could be like, oh, I don't get, like, people, you know, it's just, I think, funny to me, so... Okay, so hopefully you notice one big change here, besides the monsters that I added back into the cave that were in the Japanese version and censored in the English version. So, I find it very, very strange that, that's the same. Oh, come on. That's not who we want to see. Let's see those female monsters. Come on. Yeah, so we spent so little time on Rycross, and the music track is really cool that you know, the Planet Overworld has. Yeah, there they are. So this is actually really easy to do. You know, they didn't change any of the graphics. The graphics and the monster data were all in the game. They just basically, like, you know, flicked the switch from 1 to 0 to make these monsters not appear. So it's cool. You can change, like, what monsters appear, like, in every cave and everything, and you know, that. And now that I'm thinking about it now, actually, the monster Proto-Force, or Proto-Phallus, I think he's in the original English, Proto-Phallus. because Dark Vallis is probably actually the closest translation of the name Dark Forest or Dark Falls. It probably is Dark Vallis. And considering the first time that you meet him in any Phantasy Star, it's in Alice's nightmare. Dark Vallis probably is mostly what they were going for, but, you know, she's 16, and I'm glad we changed that for the English version. Anyway, so that monster, I think, only appears, like, late, like, in one of the last parts of the final dungeon, and, I only noticed this when I got ready to, like, do this part of the, the stream. So I was, like, you know, like, leveling up in there at the end of the edge and everything, and I was like, whoa, like, I remember seeing Proto Force, his monster data in the game, in the monster data and everything in the files, but I had never encountered that monster in my life before. I had no idea that he was actually in the finished game. So I have to go check and see if he only appears in, like, the last 2 screens of the final dungeon, and if he does, try to make him appear in the entire final dungeon. So that's my newest assignment. But anyway, yeah, we barely hear this music, and then of course you probably, you know, travel by hovercraft like I did, you know, to get around faster on break rows. So you don't get to hear this pretty fantastic and very mysterious track, and it honestly really bothered me. Or something in the Cutting Room Forest is interesting too. There's you know, you click on like a bookshelf and it gives you like a description of the object. In the game, there's a description for him, like, reading what's on this plaque, but there's no way to access it, you know, because if you press, the cutscene starts here, so that's interesting. I don't know a way of adding that in. I'm sure there's a way to add that in, but the easiest thing, of course, would be to change this line to be that line. But it just says, like, here lies the sacred sword of Elsydeon. That's all that the plaque says. Not very interesting. So yeah, so it always bothered me. It always really bothered me that this cave had, like, the music from the very first cave, you know, that you explore in the game. So I think this adds a lot to this moment here, because part of this cutscene, obviously, you're hearing the cave music. So I just think this makes a lot more sense, and it kind of draws a parallel between, you know, like the mystery of Algol to, you know, the sword in this cave, I think. See, so you get to hear a fair amount of dialogue here while the cave music is playing, so I really think this adds to the mood at this place in the game. Okay, let's look at the script. Yeah, so again, this part of the game is fantastically, amazingly cool. Especially the first time you like, I played this as a kid, and I had never played Phantasy Star 1 because I didn't even have a power base converter, and you never saw Master System games anywhere, like, once the Genesis was out. So I never got to play PS1. So how Phantasy Star 4, like, reveres, you know, Alice just made her, like, loom even larger in my mind. So, but also, you know, if you haven't played Phantasy Star 1 or 2, and I doubt a lot of modern players have played through 2 to completion, because it's so hard, with these cutscenes here, I thought it would make a lot more sense to have him show you, the player, that he's understanding what he's seeing, and that he's drawing parallels between himself now and, you know, the past parties of the Fast Phantasy Star games. Instead of just being like a passive spectator and being like, wow, hey, you know, that's his reaction, like, at these cutscenes. You can see from that look in his eyes, you know, that this is a very profound experience for him, and he's not like a passive onlooker. You know, he's an active spectator, and this is helping him understand, you know, his place, you know, in the Algol universe, and that he's got to, you know, take on the same role that the parties of Phantasy Star 1 and 2 did. You know, and it doesn't, and you don't really ever explicitly learn, like, oh, the party of Phantasy Star 2, like, they're the ones that destroyed Mother Brain and made the Great Collapse happen. They had to choose for the Great Collapse to basically happen. But of course, you know, the darkness is the one that, you know, orchestrated the whole thing, but they had to, you know, carry it out. So you never really learned that in the game otherwise, so I thought it was important for Rudy to tell you, the player, that this is the wisdom that he's attaining, you know, in this scene. It's so cool. And we don't have any dialogue about Nihai dying, so, you know, didn't have anything about that. So I added quite a bit to the scene. This is one of my favorite scenes in all of RPGs, including the Lunar games. Yeah, and so it makes less sense for her to say you're the one that, you know, Rune selected, because she knows him as Lutz and will always know him as Lutz no matter what, you know, iteration of Lutz that he is, you know. So she had just said, like, you were able to understand. Well, what? You know, what is she saying that he's understanding, you know? And we also have to address this huge, you know, angry moment he had with LaRue, you know, just like one scene ago. And the whole point of him getting the sword and Rune taking him here is to help him understand and get over that anger. So instead of just not addressing it all, I figured, you know, what could really snap him out of it? And I think a personal entreaty, you know, from Alyssa herself would be the thing to, you know, really get him, like, gung-ho and be like, okay, like, we're gonna destroy, you know, the profound darkness. Yeah, and, you know, and adding some of his backstory into, you know, why he's, you know, angry, as we went into his backstory, about how he was, like, you know, grew up sad and alone, you know, until he met Alice, and she could have killed him, and because he was, like, robbing warehouses, and she didn't, you know, and all that. So I thought about it more. I was like, well, I always figured these two characters, Alice should have a lot more to say to him, because it's such a cool moment, you know, in Phantasy Star and RPGs. So I was like, well, what would they talk about? And it was like, wow, they, you know, they have a lot of parallels, you know, to their story. You know, maybe Rudy wasn't born of royalty. Some people assume that he's of the Landale bloodline, but there's nothing in the Japanese to suggest that, and it seems pretty clear to me that Eustace Rolf, who we know is the last of the bloodline, like, it seems pretty obvious that he dies, like, in the end of Phantasy Star 2, or on Noah, you know, like, whatever. I mean, that's up, you know, that's up to interpretation, but it seems unlikely that he, you know, you know, and still there's the Great Collapse after that anyway, so even if they survive that, you know, there's a lot of bad things happening, so I think it's unlikely that he had some kind of happily ever after and, you know, continued the Landale bloodline with, like, Shur or Amy or something. So, you know, I think would really help him, you know, to hear this from her personally. And this is really, like, her story, you know, she never says anything, you know, we don't really talk about the sub in Phantasy Star 1, there's so little text, but, you know, I think this, you know, this is what the theme of Phantasy Star is, especially the theme of Phantasy Star 4. Yeah, so, you know, I feel like it's rather cold to just say, like, you know, I entrust you this sword, you know, take care of it, you know, our spirits are going to be with you. You know, he still doesn't really have a personal connection, you know, to any of them besides Alice yet in the original script, basically. So this is really drawing, you know, personal connections between him and, you know, the most important person in the Phantasy Star, you know, universe. And she really needs to impress upon him, like, yeah, not only do you have to go, like, fight a battle, but, you know, they've only been fighting, you know, Dark Force, you know. She did not have this opportunity that he has to, you know, totally destroy this thing. I thought it was important for her to express too that, you know, we'll give you our strength, but you need to step up. You need to have the willpower to fight, you know, for Algol and all of its peoples. Like, we're not just going to give it to you, and we're not just going to order you to do something like LaRouf just did. You know, we're different because, you know, we were human beings, and, you know, we understand humanity unlike they do. And I like the fact that this is kind of, reminds me of the Crucible a little bit in Mass Effect 3, even though I really don't like Mass Effect 3. Well, I just happen to be wearing my Mass Effect 1 shirt. You know, the idea that, like, the concept is really cool, I think, of, like, you know, tons of races, tons of peoples have over time been, like, gathering information for, like, this final, like, battle or this final fight. I think is a really cool, like, RPG concept. And it seems like if there's, you know, their spirits are contained in the sword, they should say that to him. Yeah, and even the original line, like, we will all be with you, you know, Rudy, always, so, like, ... It's like, it's kind of a strange way to leave it, you know, in my opinion. Yeah, and instead of saying, like, a chipper, like, don't worry, leave it to me! I thought he should have something a little more reflective, you know, to say about himself and, you know, this violent reaction he just had to this task that's ahead of them. And, speak to the reason why Rune took him here in the first place. You know, which is to kind of clear his head and get the perspective that he needs to save everybody. You know, and again, to draw more parallel between him and Alyssa. And she's like, hey, you know, you have to continue my mission. And for him to, you know, accept that and not just make a blanket statement that I will fight. You know, he's going to finish the mission that she, you know, didn't have the chance to. This is kind of a Matrix kind of, you know, Matrix 1 kind of, philosophy, I think. It's like the Oracle will tell you exactly what you need to hear, you know, instead of just his original line, you know, Elsydeon promised that it would give you power. And it's like, I don't think that really speaks to, you know, the word power. It's not really what he needed. You know, it's just more mental, much more deeper. Yeah, much deeper, you know, is what he needed from, you know, from, you know, getting the sword and talking to Alyssa. Yeah, and again, you know, this intro script is a lot of just, like, characters yelling each other's names, like, you know, Akira style, like, Akira, Kaneda! Like, here he just said, Rune, like, exclamation point. It's like, well, you know, you should, why not have him say, like, a sentence? Why not have him say what's on his mind? Yeah, and again, that's why Rune sent him in here. And I added this to give Rika, you know, more of a realization that, like, wow, you know, he's really, you know, growing up, or impressed, you know, she's really impressed with him, as you can see in, you know, her portrait right here. Yeah, instead of saying, let's go save Algol, you know, I think this is, like, stronger, like, we're fighting for our freedom, not just our survival, we're fighting for our freedom. And, yeah, and then for some reason in the original script he doesn't mention, you know, well, he says, like, what they're doing for all life in Algol to create a future free of terror, a future unbound from the evil at last. Like, yeah, you know, that's fair, but I think it's important for him to reiterate, like, because then when he says that, he's still kind of being, like, complicit with this, you know, concept of, like, predestination, where it's like, oh, you're predestined to, you know, fight, and the Great Light, like, told you so. So I think it's really important for him to say, like, outright say, like, you know, still reject the Great Light. I'm not doing this for him. You know, I'm doing this, you know, selflessly for, you know, for us as, you know, citizens of, you know, Algol. Gods and Monsters is a great movie title name. It's always been in the back of my head. Yeah, instead of, you know, Rudy, ... You're like, oh, Rudy. You know, again, to just cement, you know, kind of, and always augment, like, their attraction to each other. Yeah, Rune's original line, let's conquer Rudy for Algol. You know, I don't think that's accurate as to what he's saying. He's not really gonna be like, let's conquer, you know. Yeah, and again, the original, she just yells his name again with exclamation point, so, you know, let's say something. Yeah, and kind of bring us back to, like, you know, Demi's like, really, you know, she's had a pretty tough road this game, so, and I like that, you know, Rika has that empathy, you know, of, like, oh my god, like, you know, we have to help our friend, she's, you know, she's amazing, we wouldn't be here, you know, if it wasn't for her, you know, etc. Alright, one little pit stop. I don't think there's anything otherwise that I'm missing in terms of, like, other stuff for us to do besides the Anger Tower, which we'll do right next after that, after this. Yeah, and again, always glad to, you know, change his dialogue in his voice a little bit more, you know, even if it's like a silly rhyme. Yeah, and it's like, he is pretty old and frail, so for him just to be like, oh, that sickness was no big deal, I think is a little, it's a little silly, it's a little disingenuous, so what's important is that, you know, he felt, like, pretty terrible, and yeah, he's recovering, but he's pretty old, so I think it makes a lot more sense for him to be like, well, you know, if I don't help, something a lot worse is going to happen to us. I think that's the sentiment that Raj is trying to get across. And he's not the kind of person to be like, oh, that was no big deal, that thing that almost killed me. Yeah, there's reassurance in numbers was the original line. That's obviously not a phrase that we use. You know, so... Yeah, and again, I really try to stress that, like, you know, the original localization, you know, it was done in Japan, you know, these things weren't done by, like, you know, oftentimes the final localization wasn't solely done by, like, a native English speaker, you know, it was a, you know, a team effort, you know, really tight deadlines. Yeah, I really don't like this original line was, I was scolded by Pana, but I came anyway. Like, why would she, at this point of the game, why would she, like, scold him for trying to, like, go out and, like, save the world, you know? I mean, that seems, like, a little ridiculous. So, like, what's really going on, you know? It's like, of course she's worried about her brother, but, you know, she would let him go. Original line, there is no need to verify it. Like, that's, you know, that's just awkward. Like, we just don't talk like that, and, you know, that's how video game translations were, like, back in the day, you know, for the most part, and it's like, you know, that was fine, that gets across the line, and as a kid, you're not going to be like, oh, like, I wish this is better written or anything, but, you know, as an adult, it's just like, you know, we've had 20 years to, you know, longer than that, right? Oh my god, yeah, it's going to be like 30 years. Yeah, we've had a long time to, you know, appreciate these games as they are. The original game is never, you know, going anywhere. So it's like, I think it's a good thing that people, want to, you know, improve the quality of these games, and it's just going to make more people, you know, interested in them in the long term. It gives people a reason to play through it again. There's even, for Phantasy Star, I mean, for Final Fantasy V, I saw, there's even like a, I haven't played it, but like a joke or like a parody script that is like, if you're one of the people who complains about working designs, you should check out this script. It's just like, it's got like, we'll just say like, the whole thing is kind of like immature jokes. We'll just say that. But it's really cool that someone, you know, made that, so you can have a completely new adventure in what is already kind of like, from my understanding, FF5 is kind of like a parody of, you know, like a small like parody of like, or at least playing on like a lot of the stereotypes that Square had already established with its other games. Yeah, instead of saying protect us from the power of the darkness, I figured, you know, let's call it a physical thing. It's like a barrier. You know, it's not just like power. It's like a physical thing that they cannot get through or not survive in. You know, so it's more like a barrier than just like abstract power. But yeah, so I just think it's like, I celebrate, for me at least, you know, these fan translations that work a lot more on the script. I'm just personally a lot more interested in that than, like, gameplay enhancements, because, you know, I mean, I just don't, you know, I don't think, like, a lot of people play RPGs, you know, for, like, the gameplay. I know that's being a generalization. You're probably gonna be like, I'm, like, an idiot if you know, since I said that, and, you know, you're not the same way, and, you know, your friends aren't the same way or something, but, you know, even like back in the day, it was like, well, this is what RPGs were known for. You know, you didn't play RPGs for the gameplay, you know, even though you might like the turn-based combat and everything, but, you know, we play them for the story, and these had so much more story and more dialogue than, you know, other games of the era, so like, most attempts to make these scripts better in, like, these classic games, I think are really, you know, valuable, I suppose. So again, I didn't do tons to the gameplay, but I made Han way better, basically for this last fight, because I really don't feel like there's much reason to pick him, personally, so, and it is really cool that he's the only one with, like, all this custom, armor, and it's like, oh, his parents, you know, make armor and everything, so, I thought it'd be pretty cool if, you know, he tapped into, I don't know, like, the secrets of, you know, Palman armor making or something, since by a melee, you know, that's a region from Phantasy Star 1. So it's about, you know, it's like, it's fun writing bad jokes. It's fun. Yeah, and I really love Raja's character, so he's a lot of fun to write for, and I thought this is just something that he would say, you know. Kind of acknowledges that, like, you know, no one else, at least, you know, the Palmans, you know, and especially, you know, Grizz, I'm sure, would not, you know, get his sense of humor at all. Alright, so back we go to the Anger Tower. Yeah, and Phantasy Star 4 doesn't have tons of, like, you know, extra dungeons and blah blah blah, but, when I mentioned this before, everything that is an extra thing in the game is story related. There's not just like, at least I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's just like, go in this cave and get armor that's better. That's here for absolutely no reason. You know, all the extra, that's something incredibly rare in like an RPG. Like, think about any RPG that you played where every single dungeon is like story content, and not even just like throwaway content. You know, or even like a character that you meet that is like, you know, relatively pointless. It's like, you know, like all the places that you get upgraded equipment for Ren, you know, those are all like the machine, you know. Okay, so this is something else that I changed because I didn't think the original music made sense. I don't think it makes sense to just have that kind of upbeat, you know, upbeat tech tower music here. So this foreshadows a little bit, you know, what we're gonna see here. And again, we're at the end of the game, and the game has done some callbacks to, you know, his mentor dying. So I feel like this sets the tone better for this, you know, for this experience we're gonna have. Also, I don't see any way that it makes sense that, in the original script, she's like, voices reverberating in my head, so this Rika hears this thing. But then when they go up top, why is it only Rudy appear there? Like, does everyone have their own, like, weird, you know, test or something at the top of the Anger Tower? And if so, like, why wouldn't they, like, talk about it or something, you know, afterwards? So, because the game, when you go to the top floor, only Rudy appears there, it really doesn't make any sense, I don't think, for Rika to, you know, hear whatever's happening here. So this thing, again, so now it, you know, since our experience as the player is just from Rudy's point of view, and we don't know if anything happens to anyone else on the top of the tower, you know, we made this personal. It's just about Rudy. And, again, to foreshadow, like, what is going to be here, instead of, you know, the vague, the Anger Tower welcomes you gladly. So, and I think that, I hope, you know, makes you a little more curious, too, as to what you're going to find, you know, in the Anger Tower. Okay, so we gotta go right. Oh, we gotta deck out Raja. I like that the game automatically equips the Elsydeon. You don't have to remember how to equip it. Oh, why don't I have an extra shield? No, I feel like I should have. I feel like I should have another one, but I guess I don't. So, well, we don't need it now. Not need all those repair kits. Oh, don't need a Moondew. Yes, again, one of the only things I think it's kind of stupid that, like, in the original you had to choose between you know, you only get one set of guarding armor. Same thing with the robe. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for you just to get one, you know. Well, I'm sure we can drop. Yeah, I'm gonna do. So, and it's like, you know, it's only 14 better. It's not like ridiculously better or anything. So, it's like, well, why doesn't the game just give you, you know, enough for your whole party? Yeah, so I did add, there were two, in the last dungeon I added a guard mail, and in this one I added a guard robe. There was a soul atomizer there. Yeah, so. And let's go to our macros. Yeah, and then, too, you only hear this game, I mean, you only hear this song one time, and that's when, Alice is first, struck, you know. Oh, did I go the wrong way? Oh, I did. Shoot. Wait. Oh, I did go the wrong way. Shoot. Yeah, so the thinking is here, because you hear, when we get to the top, you're going to hear the music from, that death scene. And that's the only time you heard that track, so I think it makes a lot more sense to foreshadow that with this track, which you heard, you only heard this one time in the story context, of Alice. Yeah, and again, and these, changing something like this in the game, to me, is kind of more like something that the creators probably would have done if they had more time. Again. Oh, I forgot he doesn't get it. He doesn't have non-reverser, whatever it is. I'm trying to remember now, even what in original Phantasy Star, original English Phantasy Star 4, that the reverser, because reverser is the singular, like the first version, and then, oh geez, it's been too long. Yeah, so I think that music, this music foreshadowing makes a lot more sense. And then I think it makes more sense too. It's like if it goes back to the regular music, I was able to kind of keep that. Goes back to the regular music if you go back downstairs. And normally, you're not going to go back downstairs anyway. The idea was that it would revert to the regular tower music once you dealt with this, situation up top. Okay. Yeah, so, and I made, I wish this, I really wish this anger tower scene, you could do before you got the sword. I think it would piggyback really well on, like, his anger and everything, but, so, Brutus really had to play off the fact that just seeing his dead mentor, really drives him crazy, as it, probably would to you in real life, Oh, and his original line, is, "You're here on Rykros?" Like, that's really not what it was supposed to say. It was supposed to be, the Japanese is supposed to be like, "You're in, no way, like, Alice is inside Elsydeon." So, it's kind of implying that that implies more that he knows that this is some kind of illusion, but he just can't bring himself to, And the original, he's just like, Alice, hey, answer me, Alice. Like, it's a very more casual, reaction from him, and like, this is, he should be a lot more bothered by, instead of just like, hey, what's going on, why isn't Alice talking to me? I went back and forth really trying to make this more of a fight. And I think it's pretty hard to make a fight between two people in a turn-based RPG like this interesting. I'm sure you're thinking of a one-on-one fight in RPG that is interesting, but yeah. So I within the context of this game engine, it was like, what can I really? I wanted to make this last longer, to have more of an impact on you and make you feel like, this might be a longer battle. And to, honestly, just to hear more of the music. But, yeah, so I think I tried, like, way upping her stats, and it's like, I upped them to, like, a ridiculous level that it's like, you can't even hit her. And, we just looked at it and was like, it's just not worth it to try to balance this into, like, some kind of real fight. So, I upped her stats a little bit, just to prolong it, so you can hear, more of the music. And I couldn't make her really do anything interesting. So Great Blade does more. Yeah, so like at least it's more of a fight now, and you gotta chop her up a little bit to get past her. And like I said, mainly it's getting to hear more of the music. Yeah, and again, originally with this music, this music right now would revert back to that tower theme, and I just don't think that fits the mood of what Rudy's going through here. And yeah, he just kind of screams her name, in the original, but by now he's aware that there's a guardian at the top of each tower, so I think he would have the foresight to be like, you're messing with me. Instead of just being like, who's that? Which is his line here. Well, actually, it's his line here. Just like, who's that? So, this would bother anybody, quite a bit. To have to go through, what he went through here. Because, like, the character, you would always feel, as I'm sure Rune does, that it's like, it's their fault, that she died, basically. It's like they're gonna carry, the guilt with them forever, so to, like, literally have to kill her, even in, like, this illusionary form, would be pretty terrible. He's such a cool, this is such a cool, like, apparition, I think. I like his taunts. I like his speech in the original, so I didn't change it. Yeah, and Rudy's just response is just like, it's just weak. He's like, an illusion? Like, he knows that she's inside the sword. Like, he knows that's not real. So, like, but it's still got him, angered, and I think that's what matters. So, I'll crush you into dust is a Metal Gear Solid line. Instead of being like, is that right? You... Instead of just, huh? Like, Rudy's very just confused in this entire initial exchange, which I don't think fits the concept of what happens here, at all. And the fact that he's supposed to be, kind of like out of his mind and not thinking properly, which is why he would even, consider this guy's proposal in the first place. You should really get that across. So this was kind of a fairly big editorial change. I feel like, at least. So the original line is either "Don't you want to know about it?" or "Do you want to know about it?" Either one from both English versions. And I remember the first time I played this, I was confused. I didn't think that just hearing about the technique would mean that I made the wrong choice and I'm going to die for it. So, I mean, maybe the game really was, they were really trying to trick you, like that, to be like, oh, just, inquiring about it means you should die. But, or it means you made, like, the wrong choice, but, I just don't think it's very fair, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense, mechanically. So, I just had him say, like, just, like, use this power for, for good. Like M. Bison in Street Fighter the movie. But for good. Yeah, and even if you say yes, originally he says, I see. Well, I guess I should have done whatever he says when I say yes. I don't think it changed. I actually can't remember at all what I changed it to. I definitely didn't keep the line, show your master of the art with your body. I definitely didn't keep that, but whatever. Hopefully you don't pick the wrong answer anyway, so you'll never see what Reface says. Okay, so scrolling down. Yeah, and originally their exchange was, "Don't mess with me," and Reface says, "Huh? Why is that?" So, you know, I added a little more substance to, you know, what they're saying to each other. I think a lot of what I was trying to do in the script is saying things that the character is thinking, but the game leaves unsaid. So instead of just like, you know, in a situation where, again, where like Rika just shouts, you know, Rudy's name, like you kind of know what she's thinking, whether she's impressed with him or she's trying to drive him, you know, into an action to, you know, go like, oh, I'm worried about Demi, let's go see her. So instead of just leaving that unsaid, which, you know, I think it's you know, there is a lot to be said about writing, to leave things unsaid and, you know, for the reader to imagine it. But, you know, in a game like this, I think it makes a lot more sense for the characters to say, you know, what's on their mind. Because we don't get, you know, in a game like this, we don't get the descriptors of, you know, what the character does and how they do it. We just see them walking around on the screen as a sprite. So we don't have those extra pieces of context or those extra, you know, moments like alone with the character, like in a film. When you see a character, I don't know, waxing nostalgic over, you know, their dead brother or something, and you see them like all alone, and you get empathy for them. We don't get that through a game, so we need more dialogue, you know, to learn what these characters have on their mind and what's in their heart, I suppose. Yeah, and Megiddo is really the full name of the spell. But this conversation is just easier to keep it as Megid. And I think, I just like the way Megid sounds better than Megiddo. But Megiddo it's like a real, it's like, I think it's Latin or something, I forget now, but it's a real, there's something to the word. It's not just like a word that they made up, basically is what I mean. Yeah, and originally he leaves them with just the line, like, you know, don't forget, there won't be any danger that you'll be corrupted by the power of Megid. Just don't forget your true self. And he says, it's necessary to feel anger and hatred for humans to be human. So, and Rudy just says, oh, like, ... Like, why is he so confused in this exchange? So, you know, these beings have been around for a long time, and they're presumably, you know, have been observing human nature for thousands of years. So, to make him a little more sagely, to basically just rephrase what he's saying and just, you know, say it in a little more sagely manner, I think is very, you know, appropriate. I think this is an important concept too. It's like, you know, we all, instead of just leaving at it, is like, oh, it's okay to feel anger and hatred because you're human. Instead of leaving it at that, you know, it's like, well, what's he really saying? Because he's given him, he's trusting him with his power. So he wouldn't just be like, oh, well, it's okay that you get, like, you know, you hate things and you get angry. But this is the crux of the matter, you know. It's how it's how you act. It's okay to feel these things, but this is what was left unsaid here. It's how you act, you know, that matters. It's what you do with those feelings in the world that matters. Yeah, and you know, I added this here to I'm not like an Apple fan like at all, just for my personal taste, but Steve Jobs' documentary, his biography is one of the most interesting books that I've ever read to just learn about the unique person that he was. And was a concept that I learned from him in his book, that he didn't think of things as good and evil. He thought of things as either it's a constructive force or a destructive force. Like, and destructive meaning, like selfish, kind of burn things around you for your own benefit. And, he was honestly destructive in a lot of ways himself. But, like he told Rupert Murdoch when... this story's gonna be too long, but basically he told like Rupert Murdoch is like, like you're making a lot of money, but what you're doing is a destructive force. Like, this is bad for society, basically, like what you're doing. Like, you need to think about, your actions. This isn't, what you're doing is not constructive. And I think that's a lot more helpful a life philosophy than boiling things down into good and evil, because you can say like anything is evil, like, oh, my religion says this is evil, so it's evil. Well, it doesn't mean it's like, why? It, someone who's naturally living that way or is naturally wired that way or whatever, it might be a little unfair to say it's this, the way someone's brain works, differently than yours is evil. That's like not fair. But when I think about things, breaking it down into constructive and destructive, instead of good and evil, I think it's a lot more helpful to figure out, like, oh, is this like something that helps people, or is this something that harms people? This political idea, or this individual action, or whatever. I think it's an interesting way to look at things. Yeah. So again, I was able to keep it so like it would revert back to the normal tower music, to be like, oh, the illusion's gone. But I believe, I bet if we re-enter the tower, I bet, yeah, so that it's basically the only way I could set that up is basically like, oh, if it totally makes sense, in terms of how the music changes, as long as you don't, exit out of, the room prematurely or go back into the temple, which you don't need to ever do either of those things. But just to give you a look at what it's like to, to hack, basically, like, there's only so much you can change, so you got to find, like, shortcuts and little, cheats to make things happen, which I suppose is like, that's what you do in regular development anyway. Cool, great. Well, that was part 15, and yeah, here we are. We are ready for the final battle. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the additions that I made to the ending, and yeah, I hope you just enjoy this wonderful, beautiful game. I don't mean just by patch. I mean like just the game, and itself, and the classic Phantasy Star games, which again I think are the best story in all of classic gaming. Is Phantasy Star 1, 2, and 4, and you can throw 3 in there if you want to. So thanks for checking it out. Let me feel free to let me know what you thought. I noticed a couple errors even in the ending that I have to go back and and fix. So I thought this was gonna be the final version. Of course it's not. Got more to do, but yeah, it's pretty final. I'll make those little changes and get them up, and yeah, I hope you find the time to play this one day, and I hope you enjoy it. Really loved putting it together, and yeah, I mean, these characters are now some of my favorite, in all of video gaming. I spend a lot of time with them, and I was already felt so close to them before I started working on it, and especially the old Phantasy Star characters. So that's what's up. Yeah, enjoy the ending. So take care. Phantasy Star Generation 4. And again, you can go on my website. It's got like my project page, all the resources that I use, which as a fan, you would definitely at least want to read through the Phantasy Star Compendium, and all the information Rebecca Kowalski has on her site if you wanted to learn more about where I got most of the lore that I added back into the game and stuff like that. So that's all.